You've been lied to about your period probably since the day it started. You've been told that period cramps, PMS, heavy bleeding, feeling horrible, just part of being a woman. It's normal. Well, guess what? It is not normal. It is common. It's very common, unfortunately, but it is not normal. By the end of this video, I want you to truly understand what a healthy period should look like and how you can actually not dread your cycle because it's really not supposed to be that bad. Your period is your monthly report card. It is your health report card. So let us take all of the signs and symptoms and flags that it's giving us and use that to make adjustments for our health. How cool is it that as a woman, we literally have this monthly report card that comes to us that we can just kind of like go check, 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 check. How are things going? One of my biggest goals is, as a woman, I want you to really understand that your hormones and your cycle are your superpower. Okay. So let's start right off with period cramps are not normal. So women with painful period cramps actually have 4 times the amount of excess prostaglandins than women without painful periods. So we have 2 camps when it comes to period cramps. We have primary dysmenorrhea and secondary dysmenorrhea. So primary dysmenorrhea is the women who have 4 times the amount of excess prostaglandins. So yes, if you are having painful periods, it's not because you're cursed. It's not because it's normal. It's not just because you're a woman. Guess what? You can have a painless period. And then secondary dysmenorrhea is the women who have painful periods where it's caused by endometriosis, copper IUD, cysts, fibroids, all of those things. So let me tell you, the first time I found out that I was supposed to be able to have a painless period, you couldn't pick my jaw up off the floor. So I used to pop Midol like it was candy. I would be on the highest dose of Midol, and I would still be throwing up on my period. I would call in sick, and that was not great considering I was a music teacher. And so if I didn't go in to teach, I didn't get paid. So that was horrible, but I also couldn't be throwing up. And that literally is what would happen. I would have taken the highest dose of Midol. And if I tried to do anything like go about my day, I would end up throwing up because my cramps were so intense. And so when I found out that you should just bleed, there should be no PMS beforehand, no rage beforehand, no anxiety beforehand, no breaking out beforehand, no period poops beforehand, no cramping. I was just like, what on earth? Because that was not my reality. My reality was horrible. And I just thought that was what it was supposed to be because everybody always made jokes about period cramps. Even growing up, I remember my mom always saying like, oh, it will prepare you for child labor in the future. Let me tell you, she wasn't half wrong about that. So I have 3 kiddos. And with my first kiddo, it wasn't until I was 6 centimeters dilated that my contractions even touched my period cramp pain. So it did, in fact, actually prepare me for that. But you can actually have a painless period. So let's kind of go through what an actual ideal cycle should look like. And then we'll go through some of the reasons why it may be off. Okay. So your cycle, which would be period to period, so start of period to the start of the next period, should be within 26 to 36 days. Under 21 days, we have too short of a period. Over 36 days, too long, is starting irregular cycles. Okay. Now, your whole cycle is your menstrual cycle, not just your period. I know that sometimes we think our period is our menstrual cycle and then that's it. Like the rest of the time we're just in limbo. When I went to the doctor one time and they asked me what day of my cycle I was on, I just kind of looked at them. I'm like, how'd you know I was on my period? I'm on day 3. Didn't even register to me that they didn't know I was on my period. They were just asking where I was in my menstrual cycle. And I always thought that you're on your period and you're off your period. 2 different phases of life. And that's really not it. Every single phase of our cycle has this ebb and flow of hormones. So let's break them down. We know that the whole cycle should be between 26 and 36 days. Our period should be between 3 and 7 days. Okay. And you don't want to be bleeding less than 25 milliliters, and you don't want to be bleeding more than around 80-ish milliliters. And if you just had a heart attack, because you don't know how on earth you're going to measure that, a regular tampon or pad holds about 5 milliliters, and overnight tampon or pad holds about 10. So you can kind of do the math there. So if your cycle is too light, if you're not bleeding enough, that can be a red flag to maybe you're not building up enough estrogen. Are you ovulating? Again, this is giving us insight. Way too heavy of a period, that can be caused by fibroids, that can be caused by low progesterone, that can be caused by too high of estrogen. It can be also caused by a thyroid issue. So again, all of our period is a report card. We get to look at it and see what's going on. So the length matters, okay? The other thing that can tell you something is the color of your period blood. Now, this can be a little bit tricky because oftentimes we're looking at older blood, which tends to be more of that dark brown, unless you're like checking your pad, I don't know, every hour, which maybe you are. It's very possible. But we're really looking for that deep red, deep like wine red or cherry red color. We're looking to minimum to no clots. And so if your period blood color is really, really, really light pink, that can give you insight. Maybe I need to look into my estrogen levels. Maybe my estrogen is too low. And if we have really, really, really dark brown period blood, that's old blood, right? But that can actually be caused by one of two things. One, a tipped uterus. So that is a like physical alignment. An awesome pelvic floor therapist can help you with that. And the other cause would be low progesterone. Okay. So that can kind of give you some insight. Again, we're just on our period, you guys. And we've just learned so many things about what our period is actually telling us. Okay. So it's just important every time your period comes to just take note. Okay. What's going on? If you are feeling like you get a lot of headaches after your period or maybe on your period, this maybe would give you some insight into maybe having your iron levels tested. Okay. Maybe something is off there. And just food for thought, I will tell you that if your iron levels are off and you have a really hard time regulating iron, I cannot encourage you enough to look into GI map testing and look into parasites. A lot of times there's something much deeper going on in your gut if you have a hard time keeping your iron levels up. Okay, so we've learned so much and we're just on the period. Okay. So after our period, you head into what's called the follicular phase. This makes sense because the follicle is what's going to release the egg. So the follicle is developing and going to release this egg. Now, something really cool, when a follicle starts to when it fully matures, and releases an egg, that whole journey is about 90 days. So what you're doing to impact your hormones, whether you're changing your nutrition, you're taking a supplement, you really want to give it the full 90 days to see that difference. Same thing if you're impacting egg quality, if we're looking at trying to conceive and fertility, egg quality, you want to give it a full 90 days to see those differences. Okay. So in the follicular phase, our estrogen is starting to rise, testosterone will start to come up a little bit, and we have this beautiful communication going on between our brain and our ovaries. We should. Let me just tell you, something that really shuts down this communication is going to be birth control. Okay. So we need to be having this communication between our brain and our ovaries. So for example, our brain goes, hey, ovaries, time to make estrogen. And then when estrogen reaches the optimal levels for ovulation, it signals back to the brain. It goes, estrogen has reached optimal levels, and brain goes, awesome. I want you to release LH, which is the luteinizing hormone, which is what triggers ovulation, and ovaries go, okay. And this is the whole conversation is what hormones do. Okay. Hormones are little chemical messengers that are constantly communicating. And a lot of times when we're dealing with hormonal imbalance, it's because something has gotten in the way of that communication. And when we think about it as this conversation, it makes sense that no hormone works alone. So when someone says, I have estrogen dominance, I should do something to just lower estrogen. Should you? Or are you more so having an issue because maybe progesterone isn't high enough, or maybe you're not detoxing estrogen well? Remember, hormones communicate. They speak to each other. So if things are getting in the way of this communication, we're thinking endocrine disruptors. So endocrine disruptors are just smacking us in the face these days with plastics, with fragrance, with all of the chemicals in our skincare and our hair products, the forever chemicals that is in our nonstick cookware. I mean, even just off gassing if it's on your mattress, your couches, like chemicals are just simply everywhere, and they are massive endocrine disruptors. And so that is already putting a hiccup in this communication that we're trying to have. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Is, again, this is not the full-blown solution video. This is really how we can start to bring awareness to what's going on. Okay, so let's bring Leah back on track. So follicular phase. If you start to have a lot of, typically this is your phase of creativity and energy and the best day of my life, the first day of the rest of your life. I'm going to sign up for the marathon. I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm going to do all of that because that's what estrogen does. Estrogen actually makes your lips fuller. Estrogen is great for bone health. Estrogen makes you feel sexier. We love estrogen. Everybody gives estrogen a bad rap, but we love estrogen, within reason, right? We love it within reason. So that is our follicular phase. And then testosterone peaks, estrogen peaks, LH surges, and you ovulate. Okay. So the ovulatory phase typically starts when it ranges from woman to woman. Ovulatory phase is going to start when you start producing cervical mucus. Now, it's not a specific day. The reason why it's not a specific day is some women's follicular phase can be 10 days. Some women's can be 5 days. So the follicular phase is the length that determines how long your cycle is. So if you have a longer follicular phase, you're going to be closer to that 36-day cycle. So you start creating cervical mucus, which, by the way, is completely normal, completely good. It's something that is a sign of your fertility. A sign of fertility is a sign of your health. I know a lot of times growing up, women are not educated around that. And then they think, oh, cervical mucus, like sign of a yeast infection. No. If you have nonstop cervical mucus throughout your entire cycle and it never dries up, okay, that's a red flag. Bring that to your doctor, please. But if you are creating cervical mucus around ovulation, that's a good sign. We love that. That's really, really good. Okay. If you've been struggling to balance your hormones naturally, even though you feel like you're doing all of the things, you have low energy, you have irregular cycles, you can't get rid of the weight gain, you have PMS, you have painful periods, it's tied to your hormones, but you're very overwhelmed by all of the health information out there on what to eat, what supplements you should focus on, what lifestyle things you should change, what labs you should run. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of information out there. I have a free mini course that goes over all of the reasons why you're still struggling, even though you feel like you're doing all of the right things. And on top of that, I'm going to go over the 3 pillars, the 3 steps that are so vitally important when it comes to balancing your hormones naturally. No matter what your symptom is, this is going to apply to you because these 3 pillars and these 3 steps are so vitally important for every single woman who's dealing with hormonal imbalance. So it's yours. All you have to do is go to the QR code and go ahead and join. It will get sent right to your inbox and you can get started today and start feeling better. So we ovulate, okay? That follicle that releases the egg now forms what's called the corpus luteum, which is going to produce your progesterone. And we are now in what's called the luteal phase. Now, this is very important because progesterone is the dominant hormone in this luteal phase. This luteal phase should be 12 to 14 days. If it's under that, you are looking at what's called a luteal phase insufficiency, red flag for low progesterone, 12 to 14 days. Do you now understand why the follicular phase determines the length of your cycle? Because luteal phase should always be about the same length for everybody, okay? So progesterone is the dominant hormone in this luteal phase, which is awesome to know because if you are ever doing hormone testing and you were to test progesterone, if you tested progesterone prior to ovulation, it's going to tell you nothing. It's just going to tell you have low progesterone. Well, duh. you have low progesterone. You aren't producing it yet. Okay. So we have period, then you have your follicular phase, then we ovulate, and then we start producing progesterone. Okay. And while we're producing progesterone, estrogen will have one small rise again, but not anything like it does for ovulation. And then they both drop, and that's the start of your period. Now, if you are tracking temps, the cool thing, this is why you can use temps to track ovulation, is when that temp comes up, it's signaling that you ovulated because progesterone raises your body temp. So that's why when you are tracking temps and you see that temp rise come up and it stays sustained in that luteal phase, that's telling you you most likely ovulated because progesterone raises your body temp, which is super cool. The other thing to know is that progesterone also makes you burn more calories. You can burn upwards of an extra 300 calories per day in that luteal phase, which is why oftentimes women feel like they could eat their pantry. Okay. So something to keep in mind. You actually need more calories. You actually need more nourishment. Okay. So that is the breakdown of your phases and the breakdown of where the hormones are fluctuating. So let's now take a detective's eye and look and go, okay, where are my biggest symptoms? Do I have a lot of symptoms around ovulation? Do I have a lot of symptoms in the luteal phase? Do I have a lot of symptoms on my period? Okay. So that's again, then going to tell you which hormone potentially is the issue that you can dig further into to help support your overall health. Okay. So if you are noticing all of these symptoms, for example, in the luteal phase, which honestly is one of the most common phases that we see a lot of symptoms, because this is the phase where progesterone should be the dominant hormone. And I just want to give you a little snapshot of hormones up here. So up here, we have pregnenolone, which is like the grandfather, big hormone. And from it, we have cortisol and progesterone. Now, cortisol, you may have heard oftentimes, I feel like it goes viral everywhere because people are like, you have a cortisol phase. I need to lower my cortisol. We'll talk about that later. But anyways, cortisol is your fight or flight hormone, and progesterone, they're both made from pregnenolone. Okay. So your body will always prioritize cortisol. Cortisol, is the fight or flight. It's going to keep you alive. Your body wants to save you from the bear more than it wants to produce progesterone for you. And if you aren't actually running from a bear, you're just stressed from chronically under eating, from not getting enough nutrients, from your stress around your family or stress around lifestyle or your work or whatever it is, then your body's going to prioritize cortisol over progesterone. And then poor progesterone over here isn't reaching its optimal potential. And then we have all these horrible symptoms that we have in our luteal phase when they could be, gotten rid of if we just supported that rise of progesterone. Okay. So if you're wondering like why you have a lot of symptoms in that phase, that is most likely why, because of you want to look at progesterone and cortisol. The other reason why you want to really look at the luteal phase if you're having a ton of symptoms is again, inflammation. Okay. So remember what I talked about with prostaglandins being higher in women with really painful periods. Well, guess what? Prostaglandins, think about prostaglandins as inflammation. Okay. Now, inflammation, we tend to say it's really bad, right? I need to lower my inflammation. I need to take anti-inflammatory supplements. But guess what? When you get cut, you want inflammation to help heal the cut. Okay. That's what inflammation does. It helps heal. Now, if we have chronic inflammation, it's just overboard all the time, excess prostaglandins, not great, right? Not great, causing breakdown in our body. Now, is the answer, let's just think, is the answer to lower the inflammation by taking anti-inflammatory supplements? Probably not. Probably not. Because we need to figure out why is our body currently inflamed? Okay. This is something I do with my clients all the time is I really encourage you to ask why. Ask why. Okay, great. Why am I on that supplement? Great. Why is that going to help XYZ? Ask why. Because you are your biggest health advocate always. Okay. And if you are just constantly jumping from turmeric to curcumin to resveratrol, trying to think of other anti-inflammatory supplements to omegas, you're going to keep hopping that train for a really long time until you figure out what's causing the chronic inflammation. Okay. So I will tell you across the board, things that do help with prostaglandins in general actually are omegas. They've been shown to be extremely beneficial. Omega 3s from fish, actually. So that is a great one. But again, it doesn't deter the fact that we should be looking a little bit deeper to figure out what is causing the inflammation in the first place. Okay. So I hope that kind of gave you a little like view of what's going on with your hormones. I always think it's cool to understand what my cycle should be doing and where I can start to look for deeper knowledge. I get asked period questions all the time. So I want to do a rapid fire here. If this is something where you go, okay, I have all of these random symptoms. This helped me to understand it, but now I want more help in fixing it. That's what the hormone reset program is. We help women literally reset their hormones so that you have all the tools that you need to get your energy back, have painless periods, not have PMS, not feel like you don't know who you are the week before your period. You can go to bit.ly/HRP free call and book your free consult call to tell us about your symptoms and see if this is a good fit for you. Okay. So, period questions. A big one actually is, what if I get cramps every other cycle? And so that if you're getting cramps every other cycle, again, you most of the time have two ovaries unless you've had one removed. And so it could be which side you're ovulating on. And if that is the case, I would really highly encourage you to start thinking about like physical alignment. Because if you're doing the nutrition and you're doing the things to support egg quality, is it possible that maybe one ovary is not getting enough blood flow? And so that is something I actually always refer people to Dr. Angie Miller. We've had her on here a few times, but she works a lot with hypopressive breath work. She's a pelvic floor therapist, and it's really about lifting up those organs and making sure that your uterus and your ovaries are getting optimal blood flow. And it helps with alignment, and it also helps with overall hormonal balance, because obviously they function so much better when they're getting optimal blood flow. So that's a great one to kind of think about. And is it bad to skip my period if I'm not having a cycle? Yes. Okay. Your period is your fifth vital sign. It is definitely something that we want to be making sure we're having. Everything that I just talked about is about a woman with a natural cycle. I'm not talking about birth control. Birth control, you're on synthetic hormones, depending on which one you're on. It could be suppressing ovulation. It's a completely different story when you're on birth control. This is for a woman's natural cycle. Okay. So obviously very different. Am I automatically ovulating if I get a period? No. You can actually have what's called a withdrawal bleed or an anovulatory cycle. This is why I do highly encourage using temps to track your cycle, so you can confirm that you are getting an ovulation, because again, that may be a reason why you're having issues with your period, is because you are not having an ovulation. So that's something to just keep in mind. How do I know if my symptoms are hormone related or it's just normal PMS? If there's anything that's really interfering with your mood, your energy, your daily life, you guys, that's hormone related, it's fixable. Okay. So I just think it's so awesome, like how many tools we have available, but also our cycle is so cool, and our hormones are really our superpower. And we really need to stop thinking that hormones are out to get us, and instead really look to them on how they can help give us so much more energy and vibrancy and creativity, because that's what they truly can do. And when we stop looking at them as, oh, they're so frustrating, I can't believe they give me all these issues and symptoms and blah, 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 is when we can really turn them into the superpower that they truly, truly are. So I hope that you're starting to go, oh, okay, maybe my cycle's cooler than I think. But also, you can truly feel amazing. You can. So if your period is sucking the life out of you, we can help you.